Over to you, Niharika, to take the panel discussion ahead.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sahana. I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to interact with such amazing speakers who've had extensive work in their respective areas. And I think Vamshi Priya has a power cut. Okay, she'll join. No problem. That works. All right. So yeah, a warm welcome to everyone who's attending this session and to our speakers, Sujata, Nikita, Kairali, and Vamshi Priya, who will be joining shortly. Before we start, I just thought we could do a quick, a poll amongst the audience. Can we have the Mentimeter link, please? Yeah, please click on the link. So we just wanted to understand, the topic for a panel also, it's a pretty $1 million question everyone's been asking, right? The NEP is a beautiful document, but how is it going to translate into reality?
Monday morning, they come collect the office, no?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so please click on the link. We'd like to know where you stand and what your understanding of the NEP is. Is everyone able to see the question? Okay, interesting. So if that's quite optimistic. It's amazing. I'm really glad to see that. I think except for one person, almost everyone has put it in the top right quadrant where we think it's visionary as well as realistic. That's great. I think that makes our job and discussion much easier as well. Amazing. I think just a few seconds more. And then, okay, really interesting. Okay. So it's very extreme. Either you think it's both visionary and realistic, or you think it's neither of the two. I don't see any responses in the other quadrants. Okay. Wow. Pretty divided audience we have here. All right. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. I think we should. Okay. Has this been hacked? I did not send this message, but there's a message from me in the chat box. Can someone from the Silray team just give us a response?
Apologies, everybody. We are just figuring it out. Just give us a minute.
Sure. Yes, thanks for disabling the chat. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure this is hacked because I did not send that message. I wouldn't send myself a message like that. But yeah, okay. I think
Niharika, if I could just take a minute before you begin.
Sure.
Just a reminder to everybody to be mindful about our code of conduct. Please do be respectful. And again, like we said earlier, we encourage collaboration over conflict. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thanks, Sahana.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that this is some kind of a hack that's happened because there was a chat message sent from my account. So it's possible that the others also who sent did not intentionally send it. It's been sent by mistake from their account, or it's not of their own volition. So
Right.
yeah.
We'll
But
look
yeah,
into it.
it's great that you've disabled the chat for a while. I think that's better. Let's go ahead with the conversation and not lose the opportunity to hear from our speakers. All right. So great. Thanks for the poll. We have, as we observed, very extreme views. Either we think it's both visionary and realistic, or it's neither. But let's get started and hear from our diverse panel. Maybe we could start with Kairali. Kairali, you worked a lot with children from very diverse backgrounds, and inclusive education has been your, sort of forte or area that your body of work has focused on that. So, where have you seen that the NEP speaks about inclusive education, and how is that likely to impact your work?
Thank you, Niharika. Actually, Mr. Rishikesh has told all about NEP and part of inclusion also. But I would like to start with telling that I had this greatest experience of working in Spastic Society of Karnataka, where we did inclusion in a reverse way, because we had a lot of children who are bright and we didn't know how to take them forward. So what we did was we enrolled children who are dropouts from the mainstream school because they had some learning difficulties, and also children from the poor socioeconomic background. My goodness, what an interaction it was, what an inclusive education it was. And we took them through from grade 6 to 12. It was fantastic, but my sincere thanks goes to the real professionals who went out of the way to understand the children, and in spite of whether they had the training or not, and our volunteers from the community. Between them, we had a fantastic results of inclusion. It is still continuing. My colleague is heading the unit, and that is to start with. But at this point, I also would like to mention a couple of things about the policy to start with. Even though Mr. Rishikesh has gone detail, I only talk about my part of it, that is inclusive education. The new educational policy provides to all students a quality inclusive education system with particular focus on historically marginalized, disadvantaged, and underrepresented groups. The objective once again will be to leave no child behind. And now the main highlights of inclusive education in NEP, which I am very, very positive it will be implemented. And I'm sure all of you wanted to see all our dear children sitting in your classroom happily and studying. And complete consonance with the provision of rights for persons with the Disability Act 2016. I'm sure many of the teachers are familiar with the RPWD Act of 16. It is a disability has been defined based on an involving and dynamic concept. Guidelines are issued for 21 disabilities. Before it was only 7 disabilities. Now there are 21 disabilities, and all schools with inclusion are supposed to follow these rules. And second thing is create a learning environment that caters to the diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is another thing of the policy. Full equity and inclusion are the cornerstones of all education decisions to ensure that all students with diverse needs are able to thrive in the education system. Who are the learners with diverse needs? There are many people have this question. Learners with diversity in terms of physical needs, academic needs, and psychosocial needs. Of course, student with special needs comes under this. Next is inclusion of preschool education. As Mr. Rishikesh mentioned, NEP 20 is a major booster to scale up access of education to children with special needs. Many preschoolers with special needs may need appropriate preparation for sustained inclusion. Children with disabilities will be now, according to the NEP, will be enabled to fully participate in the regular schooling process from the foundation stage to the higher education, that is from preschool to the grade 10. Implementation of universal design for learning. Many teachers present here will be familiar with the ULD. It is being practiced by many schools and all over. Universal design for learning is an approach to tutor, minimize barriers, and maximize learning for all students. Each learner in the class has his or her own background, preferences, strengths, needs, and interests. Curriculum should provide genuine learning opportunities to all. This suits our special learners very well. Next one is competency-based learning instead of content-based. In the content-based learning, the children are what we mostly follow, are allowed to learn with the content. But on the other hand, in the competency-based learning, allows students to progress according to their flexible time, which is very, very good for students with special needs. Now, as Mr. Rishik has mentioned, school complexes will be provided as a resource center for the integration of children with special needs, which is a great thing to happen. Resource rooms in conjunction with special educators. There are so many special educators over there. They will continue to work for this. They will support the children with the severe or multiple disabilities and will assist parents or guardians achieving high quality education in the home-based learning also. Now, home-based education is going to continue because all the children with the disabilities will not be able to join the mainstream school. Children with a severe learning or physical disability will continue to stay at home and learn, but they will be part of a school. And then recruitment of special educators with disability, cross disability. What is the meaning of cross disability? Now it is not only specializing, a person who is specializing in the hearing impairment may also get specialized in learning difficulties. So with a few teachers, few special educators, a school may be able to manage, maybe able to address the needs of many people. Assistive technology based for various special schools will be available for children with special needs. That is the promise, and I hope the promise will happen, because assistive technology allows students with special needs to access physical environments, be mobile, communicate effectively, access computers, and enhance function skills that may be difficult without the use of technology. And these children continue to use the technology not only in the school, in the university, and in the colleges also. This is my opening remark, Niharika. I hope it made some sense to all of the teachers and the participants.
Thank you, Kairali. Yes, yes. I think it was a great summary of, where, in what ways the NEP talks about inclusivity in terms of children with special needs also. What are all the measures that the NEP talks about, which would be relevant to your work, as which is what we were curious about. So thanks, Kairali, for that. I think we'll move on to Vamshi Priya. Yes, great. All of you have unmuted yourselves. Vamshi Priya, your experience has been from the school system, right? You've interacted with other educators, administrators, parents. I think you've been at the forefront of the mainstream education system, right, where every child inevitably would experience what you are trying to work for. So where do you see the NEP is going to have the greatest impact in the kind of work that you're doing, and what is what's going to change for you in your work?
Thank you for that, Niharika. First of all, on the outset, I would like to render my humble pranams to all the dignitaries on the screen and off the screen. And thank you, Sildre, for inviting MBJ Group of Institutions. I stand here as a principal, and I head the school. Basically, a very good morning to one and all. That was a very apt question that you have mentioned. As far as I understand, and I've been hearing to most of the people who've been contributing directly through their policies and submitting their papers, and having heard to Rishi in the morning, I think it is very pertinent for us to understand whether NEP is basically a boon or a bane. That should be the first important point as educators, as academicians, and as facilitators for us to understand, because it's come out with I would say maximum advantages, but yes, as he rightly pointed out, there are few disadvantages also, and any change is certainly going to bring challenges. And it's very difficult for us to adapt to those changes. And as Kairali Madam has mentioned regarding her inclusive part of it, that is how she considers inclusiveness in children, I would take it up from there and say inclusivity is not only for differently able children or children with that needs. It is for teachers, it is for our stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, it includes our parents, our students, as well as community. Then we can have a good grooming of inclusiveness. Unless until we are able to match the gaps and remove the barriers, we wouldn't be going forward. I think my panelist members here agree to what I am contributing to the session, and also the participants who joined worldwide. So that is my first take on inclusiveness. So that means even the leader, the chief administrative officer, that is me as a head of the institution, is also a part of this inclusiveness. So unless until I get to the nitty-gritty of a child, understand what he exactly needs, and try to transform that teaching, learning, transformation, which is a triangular process which happens in a school premises, to their level of understanding, I don't think we are successful enough. And NEP has thrown a light on this, and we would like to move ahead, and probably I'll contribute more in the coming up parts of it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Amshipriya, for those opening remarks. I think we'll move on next to Sujata. Sujata, you've been very active in the implementation of the RTE, and again, I think your perspective would be really interesting in terms of what are the challenges you see in the implementation of the NEP, which is also a new vision document that's come from the government. But then again, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip, right? So where do you see the challenges in the implementation of the NEP, and how do you see what you're already working on? How do you see that being affected by the policy?
Speak.
Yes, we can hear you, Sujata.
Okay, I thought it's on mute.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone, one and all. And it's wonderful platform to see so many delegates here with a various experience in a different field, wherein we are also getting to know what we are not aware of. And to start off with, Mr. Rishi gave a very good prospects about various policies and drafts what has been drafted in the new policy. And to start off with in what way it's going to affect in my area, yes, it's a big challenge in the area where I am working. As Vamsi ma'am mentioned and Kairali ma'am mentioned, we not only have to look into the point of when we say inclusive. I appreciated the ma'am how she put it across. Even that discrimination will be there among the parents. That discrimination will be among the disabled children and the normal children, and discrimination from the socio-economic background children and the upper class children. So these kind of various discrimination, if we start jolting, then we get many of the ways where the kids and parents, each one of them is discriminated in the institutions. So the good point which I saw in the national education policy was inclusive education, what they are mentioning for the disabled children. Yes, I agree. Even today, our Indian system is an inclusive education system. But how far this has reached every institution? How far this is aware to all the parents, especially what the Kairali ma'am is dealing with, the special needs children, what we talk. When we say special needs, it's not just that someone is autism or something else. I think ma'am will agree there are 21 different disabilities. So when we categorize this 21 disabled children, so how well we are catered in the school to equip the needs of these children, and how well the parents are aware that what is the right of the children. Because I always talk about the right of the children. That is what I come from RTE, Right to Education Act. In that act, the various acts, what it comes under the articles 21A and various other articles, no, none of the schools are aware of this. So I would definitely take up this particular point of the national education policy, wherein each and every child gets their right, and each and every parent know what is the right of their children and what is the rights of themselves as a parent in that particular institution where his or her child is studying.
Interesting. So, Sujata, I think what stood out for me in what you said is the fact that the schools were not aware of the rights of the children, right? And which means that awareness is really important to the implementation of the policy, and that
yes,
seems to be a gap, at least in the past, and it could be a potential gap going forward as well.
Exactly. See, when we get all sorts of complaints to the RTE or the Child Rights Trust where I'm a member, so we get various complaints wherein when we try to deal those complaints and come across to the many of the institutions, their own teachers are not aware about the RTE acts. See, under RTE acts, whether it is physical abuse or the verbal abuse, there are so many ways. POCSO will come. So none of the teachers are aware of these acts itself. Wherein when the cases comes to us and we take it to this thing, parent take that to the Karnataka Child Protection Committee, then I will be involved to resolve the case between the parent and the child. I'm always for the child. See, the reason is whether the child has made a mistake or not, that is secondary. It's end of the day, we as an adults, we as an institution, it is our responsibility to put the children back into their track. So you cannot throw them out of the institution and give the TC and tell them that you go somewhere else. You don't fit into this institution. So then why is that like these policies are not made aware to the teachers? Starting from the security to the van driver, each and everyone should know the Right to Education Acts, under which what is the right of the child and a parent when something happens like this. So if that awareness is given to the institution staff who are working or dealing, it's not only about the educational institution, all the NGOs, every institution wherein the children are dealt below the 18 years, they should be aware of all these acts. So at least by that, we can cut down the harassment, sexual abuses, and molestation. There are so many various problems where a child will undergo. So by understanding the severity and the seriousness of these acts, we can cut down and bring the these kind of cases, we can lower it down.
Got it. Yeah. So awareness is a huge gap that you've experienced firsthand also in the implementation of the RT, and it could be a serious issue going forward with the NEP as well, right? Thanks, Sujata, for that insight from your experience. We'll have Nikita share with us now. Nikita, your experience has, been extensively to do with the mental health aspect of education, both in terms of the, young children, their mental health while they're learning. But at the same time, also you've been involved in higher education, right? Because you are also someone who is an educator in the higher education space, and you work extensively in that field. So where do you see the NEP impact in what you do? And what does the NEP speak about? If you can just share with, for our audience, once from your perspective, how your work is affected.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be amidst all of you, and it's really amazing that we're having this conversation. And as I am a psychologist, I am in the higher education sector. I've been going through the policy, and in the first page itself, the policy mentioned that it's not about teaching students what to learn, but rather how to learn. So the concept of how to learn itself brings out the metacognitive aspects, where we're just not telling them, okay, 1 + 1 is equal to 2, or a plus b whole square is equal to whatsoever. But rather, we are trying to instill in them the aspects of cognitive abilities, like, how did we even arrive at that formula, like beginning with the pure math. And that first thing really, made me like realize that we are changing, it took us 34 years right now, to have a policy in place that is super optimistic and that is challenging to us. And many people do think that it's, I don't know, like I have even heard few people telling that we are not sure if we'll be able to implement it. But I'm super optimistic about it because as Mr. Rishi rightly mentioned that it is visionary in nature. And even with the help of Mentimeter, we understood that it is realistic. It is just changing the way we go about education, but not the aim. And when even throughout the NEP, mental health aspects are mentioned subtly. Like they're not outright over there saying that these are the things that have to be there. But the emphasis on arts and humanities streams, as well as the emphasis on social emotional learning, the emotional capabilities and the cognitive capabilities, the subtle mention itself, if we look at it deeply, it will give us an understanding that the states and the schools have the ability to inculcate all of these aspects. So I would say that NEP is providing us a very amazing platform by giving importance to emotional capabilities or social emotional or cognitive capabilities itself. So it is providing us the opportunity right now to inculcate mental health in kids. So, as we have known that Delhi implemented the happiness curriculum in 2018, and it involves mindfulness, social emotional learning, gratitude journals, and all of that. So that I think we can consider that as a demo or a run through that Delhi has implemented it, and we can see the changes right now. So I think it's very easy for us also, but yeah, we do have our own challenges of implementing it stepwise. But NEP also provides us an opportunity to have mental health in the mainstream curriculum rather than just the add-on subjects that are there in higher education. Because right now we have many add-on subjects which students usually write for the sake of getting credits. But if we could have it in the mainstream education, both for the students as well as in teacher education, as it is in a continuum. And if we see right now, because of COVID and even because of the teacher to student ratio, there's a lot of burnout and compassion fatigue in educators, primary educators, secondary high school, or even higher education. So if we could implement mental health concepts, it could be as simple as gratitude journal, or it could be something related to how do we identify the symptoms of burnout, or it could be something like how do we inculcate the concept of safe spaces in the schools or amongst the colleagues itself. So if we could, it also, as I mentioned, NEP did provide us the platform to include mental health into the mainstream curriculum. So I would say that NEP provides us with a lot of hope, and I'm super optimistic about the way we can revolutionize the education sector that we have in India.
Thanks, Nikita. I think clearly our audience also shares your optimism in terms of the NEP being both visually and realistic. I'm just curious, since you've mentioned and we've all read the policy as well, right? It's not a very explicit mention, right? The mental health bit. So do you think that that's enough? I understand what you're saying in terms of there is an implicit, understanding for catering to every child's need. But is that enough? It felt like a lot of it is in the hands of the educator eventually, right?
True. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. We can hear you.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that that's a drawback.
Nikita,
that
your voice is slightly, it's not very, very clear. Could you maybe just hold the earphone, the microphone?
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yeah, slightly better.
Okay, good. Just please do let me know. Like I'm actually, I'm in the panel from the college, so there's a bit of network issue right now. Yeah. So as you mentioned, mental health is not given priority as how it should be in the policy, but looking on the brighter side, it is subtly mentioned because we are giving importance to the emotional development of the kid. Over here, when we're talking about implementation of mental health in the curriculum over the country, I would also, suggest that if the committee is formed at the state level, which are working in a neurological center, and if we could have people from psychology background, people, educators, policymakers who have psychology background, so it easy for us to understand how do we go about it. You know, having that one particular quota reservation which has a psychologist on the board or an educator with a psychology background on the board, it will become easier for us because you know, having when I mentioned that, you know, we have to mainstream mental health into academic, we also have to look into the hours that a teacher has to dedicate to teach. Is it going to be an extra credit paper or is it going to take two classes per week? So even looking at that, instead of having it as an extensive paper, if we could add it into the curriculum in one way or the other, like an extracurricular activity which are already in the schedules of both schools and higher education, I think in that way we will be able to inculcate mental health. But I do really hope, as in discussing that, we have to keep on updating and drafting new policies as and when the time requires. So probably in the next draft, I think, you know, mental health and the curriculum, well, mental health and the curriculum will be given much more importance than what it is given right now.
Got it. Thanks, Nikita. I see we're already getting in some questions. And the questions are mostly around awareness. So we will get to that during the conversation as well, as we go forward. Also, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that I had the opportunity to actually meet Dr. Kasturi Rangan a couple of weeks ago, all right? And interestingly, I've been curious about how the implementation is going to happen. So I did ask him a few questions around that, right? Like, what do you think are the challenges that would occur in the implementation of the NEP? And I will share that with you, but after hearing from our speakers, because I don't want to again bias or move the conversation in a particular way. I think there are a lot of interesting insights that will come from our speakers first, right? So back to the speakers. Let's get to now the meat of the matter, right? When it comes to the implementation, where do you see the challenge and how do you think this challenge can be overcome, right? So Sujata has already mentioned one challenge in terms of the awareness. How do you think we could overcome that, Sujata? How can the awareness be increased amongst educators, parents, and all the stakeholders?
See, Niharika, I saw the question also in the chat box. Someone asked whether it can be displayed in the school about the rights. Actually, the RTE Act says that it has to be displayed, but how many schools are following it? But how many institutions are aware of this? 1098 is a child helpline, okay, which is my visiting card backside. I have that. So 1098 number is for the child helpline. Any child, any form of abuse they undergo, they can call directly to that number. So this has to be displayed in every institution, which has not been done. We have not seen anywhere. At the same time, including the fee structure, including the rights, and also the policies, what the school will do, that has to be there on the portal. Whether it is about their uniform code or their haircut, this thing, whatever the rules, even the set rules, what the school will say, that has to be displayed on their website. All of a sudden, one day they cannot ask the child, okay, your hair is very long, you go back and get your haircut done, or stand them outside make them stand outside the classroom and humiliate the child in a different way. All these things, that is why I said the policies and rules which is there, but it's not been followed. The simple reason is awareness. This awareness has to be given to the parents through the websites, through the social media, and also every institution should be held responsible if they are not putting it on the notice board, which I think our education department is blindly closing their eyes and sitting and watching all these things.
A way around this, I mean, what you're saying is not even something that educators need to take an initiative for. It's something that's literally mandated by the government.
Government and the institutions.
And the institutions, right. And it's literally mandated, but it's not happening. What do you think could potentially close that gap? Can
basically awareness to the parents. awareness to the parents as well. Even though if we are aware, I myself being a parent, maybe I am different because I am branded as an activist for the children. So I'm not the one who will stand or take any kind of things which happens in front of me. Let it be for my children or some other child. I'm always there. So, but many parents, their first and foremost thing for them to step back is their child. The child will get targeted. His marks will be reflected if we go and question them. So these kind of things, even today we see that in an educated parent's mind as well. So this is what I said, like people have to come out. See, there are so many kind of changes, various things, but today, yes, definitely after this pandemic, we are seeing many parents coming forward about the fee structure or some other issues. They are making a platform where the awareness will be given to the parents. So, but with all these things, the first and foremost, I would always blame openly in any forum, it is our system. It is our system which we are putting up. We are taking it how they are giving it to us. We are not questioning our rights. That is the first and foremost thing which each and every individual citizen should understand. What is their rights, whether it is our own rights or our children's rights. When someone is questionable, when someone is liable or accountable to something, you have all rights to question that. When people come up with these things, then only the institutions will also be aware that what is their role, and they have to do it. You go and check, I think not even 10 to 15% of the schools, only in Bangalore I'm talking. If you go and check, you will not get any of the schools who are following the CPP. They do not know what is CPP. That is Children Protection Policy, which every school should have, and every month they should conduct a meeting in which one parent representative should be there. So who is following all these things? Our BO, if you go and complain, and people like us, if we come forward, then only they will act. Otherwise, they don't know anything.
Got it. Got it. So very interesting point. So when you mentioned awareness is a gap, right? And there were questions around how do we close that gap. And you also mentioned that it is something that is mandated.
Yes.
It's so that means that those in charge of implementing it should ideally be aware. They themselves are not aware, and maybe the parents can hold them accountable, but there is no system to actually allow for accountability, right? So systemically there needs to be something that holds the educators or the ones responsible for implementing this accountable. I think a system for accountability is I think something I'm getting from what you're saying. Okay, that's really interesting insight. Thanks, Sujata. Again, since we are on the topic of awareness amongst the stakeholders, I'd like Vamshi Priya to probably pitch in at this point. And you have interacted a lot with parents as well, right? How do you get parents to get more involved in, in probably seeking accountability, understanding what the children deserve, and ensuring that all the stakeholders are on the same page? What ways do you see that you could help implementation of the NEP?
Thank you, Niharika. And I think I'll sum it up in 3 points. One, taking forward the metacognition skills, which Nikita has mentioned. And the second thing, which Sujata has mentioned about the policies and how unaware are we, and we don't self-check ourselves whether it is possible or not, the possibility. And lastly, how we can equip our parents to be a part and parcel of the community. And we all believe a school is for community or society, and society is for school or the education institutions. Firstly, coming back to metacognition skills, I think it's such an important point, and I will retrace the path which Rishi had mentioned. He did mention that knowledge is the crux part of it. We do say we have to really contribute to those higher order thinking skills, but we are forgetting we need to start from the foundation, that is knowledge. So going by that point and what NEP contributes, one thing we need to understand, going by the hybrid learning, the blended learning, the flipped learning, to which we have been exposed in last 17 months, children would not retrace the school path for knowledge assimilation. They will come into the school for knowledge exchange, basically. They exchange with one another. So quite a lot of metacognition skills are required here, because the word metacognition is think to rethink. So we are revolving around the 2-letter word rethink, recreate, re-engineer, reimagine, as well as restore. So when we have to restore the information, that is where we find the gaps and the barriers of learning. So knowledge, no doubt, is factual, it is procedural as well as conceptual, but certainly it is the lower order thinking skills which is required to escalate to higher order thinking skills. If I didn't know how the music world works, without the rhythm, the basic, the arts, I don't think I would be able to take it up as an objective per se when I am contributing an art integrated learning which comes from NEP back into my subjects. So I do need to bridge in the barrier, the concept between the arts as well as art integration. This is coming back to metacognition, which Nikita had mentioned, and that's beautiful because it is my baby and I too love it. Okay, thank you so much for the contribution. And as Sujata had mentioned, she rightly did mention that not everybody is aware about this policy. Thanks to the CBSE affiliation, Central Board of Secondary Education, which makes it possible that yes, a POXO committee has to be there in school, and there has to be a child safety committee, wherein, as she rightly mentioned, a parent should be involved, a child should be involved, a teacher should be involved, and a community person should also be involved, along with the management and the principal. That is the head of the institution. So only then we can actually visualize the vision and mission of the school. Then come back to the visionary aspect of NEP. So if we do not start right at the basic, how would we really think about 2030 implementation, which NEP is bringing about, right? That is a major challenge, because first, coming back to what Kairali madam had mentioned in the morning about the inclusivity, it is very difficult for a parent to accept the barriers of his or her own child. Where is the problem? The acceptance and the tolerance is a major value, actually speaking. And that acceptance is not seen in a parent herself or himself. How would he or she get that reciprocation from the leaders or people who are really handholding the child? So that is a major challenge for us, to make it possible for these barriers to be ironed out. That becomes a difficulty. And as Nikita madam was mentioning, it is very important to have those people in school, like a counselor or a psychologist, who really can get to the nitty-gritty of the problem and try to make that kind of understanding between the child, the parent, and the teacher, to bring the covenant management amongst all those three. Unless until the relationships are bond tighter, I don't think it can work. I hope all my panelists would agree to whatever I have mentioned. Thank you for listening me out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vamshipriya.
Can I just take a minute? I just have a quick announcement to make. So the spontaneous learning workshop begins at 12:30. In case there are members from the audience who have registered for the workshop, please do make sure that you join in on time. Thank you. You can go ahead, Niharika.
Sahana, how much time do we have for the panel discussion? Just
if you can conclude in another 10 minutes.
Okay, all right, sure. Okay, cool, thank you. So yeah, all right. So thanks, Vamshipriya. You really brought out the importance of going back to the basics. And I think a very interesting point that you mentioned is, when we talk about awareness, it's not just awareness about the NEP and the policies that are available and that should be implemented, but also a self-awareness about, amongst the parents about what their child needs and asking for it, right? Sometimes there's also this tendency for parents to just leave their children to the system, or to the school and expect the child to do well. But you brought out a very important point that actually, if the parents are first, they should be the ones to appreciate what the child needs, and then they can fight for it, right? That's such an interesting point. Thank you for that.
If I could get a minute, I think I can tell something which is piloted back in Malaysia when I was teaching. I hope my panelists are okay. May I have the permission to go ahead, please? If yes, I can just put this point. See, basically, I just wrote it down because I shouldn't forget to tell this. S with a hyphen AERP. This is a concept that I had come up with and we piloted in Malaysia way back in 2006 or so. And because you told me about self-awareness, that S stands with self. A stands for awareness, E stands for evaluation, R stands for reflection, and P stands for progress. And as we were talking during the Rishi's session, we were contributing to the economy, the experiential economy. And if you see in this process, evaluation is the second step, but the last step is the progress, and everything revolves around swa. That is, it is about self. So creating this may be a standard and awareness program for children. And we did develop what is called as a graphical analysis, and every child checked for himself and introspected. Generally in India, when we talk about I, it is egoistic. I'm sorry to say so. It can also be, I can do it. I shall do it. I shall achieve it. I am capable of it. We are capable of it. You are capable of it. This concept should revolve between the teacher, the student, and the parent to move ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Ma'am Shafia. So with that, Kairali, I want to ask you, what are the challenges that you see in the implementation of the NEP? And
first and foremost, first and foremost, let me agree with Sujata, the lack of awareness in every field. The lack of awareness among parents of the so-called neurotypical children, the teachers, the management, which comes as a hindrance for inclusive education, which we have been trying in our country for so many years. What happens is, if they are not sensitized, that affects the children's image, self-esteem, and there will be a lot of dropouts. And at this point, I would like to tell you, from my experience of so many years working with special needs children, I have come to one conclusion, that every child can learn, every child, but it depends upon the cognitive ability. Now, we are not going to put everybody in the mainstream school. A child who has got a severe intellectual disability will remain at home or in a special school. I am only talking about the Supreme Court judgment of 40% and below. Those are the children who will be coming to the mainstream school. Everybody can learn. Some of them with cognition, they may go up to the PhD. I had a student who finished the PhD. He is running a stocks and share company now. And there are children, many of them have completed in spite of severe disabilities, but their cognition is intact. But some of them may go to maybe pre-vocational skills, maybe, or some of the home-based skills, they will go. But everybody will learn, everybody can learn. But then how do we do it? It's very easy in a forum or in a paper to say all the schools must take children with inclusive education. Everybody must take. If you do not take, it is wrong. You are not sensitive to our needs. Even I have felt it many times, but it is so difficult. When there are about a large class size of 40 children sitting, and imagine 2 children, one with an hyperactivity and maybe one child with an autism or any other disability sitting, it is very, very tough for the teacher to manage. It is very easy for us to tell, she has to manage. Yes, that is why she has to go through a proper training thing. What we are all thinking, a good training by RCI with the cross disability is a must for all the teachers. And the mainstream teachers also have to go through some training. It is possible for a principal like us to tell, but because she knows about it, years of experience. But what about the young teachers who come? They may not be knowing the needs of these children. It may be a very small needs, and large size of the classroom, and lack of multidisciplinary team in a school. Very few schools, maybe some of the CBSE schools must be having. You need a counselor, you need a therapist for various needs of the child, maybe, and a counselor is a must. And as she was mentioning, and all the multidisciplinary team, medico-social worker and a pediatric neurologist visiting often. Without that, the principal or the sensitive teachers will not be able to manage, because each one of us got a special role to do. So the big classroom has to be changed. And the infrastructure. Now, if to implement this, what happens to infrastructure? They are telling all things for all children, it should be accessible. Education should be accessible. So what about the existing schools where which we cannot even, our children may not be able to go. Some of them may not be able to go. That means they need to change. They need to change. That is the first thing. Infrastructure need to change. Wherever the children with the physical needs are admitted, the infrastructure has to change. Same with applies to the learning, teaching, learning materials, accessibility, technology. If all these things are at the moment lacking, it's a major challenge for a school. And lack of teachers, lack of trained teachers. In a classroom of 40 or 30 or even 20, you need a special educator along with the class teacher to understand. I'm not discriminating the special educator or the mainstream teacher, but each one has to sit in the morning and decide, oh, these are the children we have got. This is what I am going to do. I'm going to help. And what about the remedial centers? Every school is supposed to have a remedial center, but how many schools have the remedial center? And also, I have found from my own experience, I have worked with many mainstream schools to empower the teachers. The remedial classes are considered to be a punishment. But here, the children will be pulled out. So the other children will make fun and tell them, oh, you are going to remedial education because you don't know nothing, you are a fool, you are whatever it is. I had an occasion when I was assessing a child of grade 7, bright kid with a specific learning disability, had a lot of problem with writing and reading. And as he came, and I usually spend half an hour building a rapport with the child and trying to be very friendly. I don't know whether I succeeded. He told me, ma'am, I know you will write a report. At the end of it, you'll write recommendation. I said, yes, how do you know? No, ma'am, I have seen my friends. Then what will happen? He says, you will write, the child should be given remedial education 3 times a week. Please don't write, ma'am, that. I said, why? They said, first of all, they will do remedial classes only during sports time or music time and or something which the child likes. Second thing, other children make fun of us. So we need to have a thought about it. There has to be a brainstorming sessions like principals like Harriet. She can help us for this, how we can get all these things, put it in place before doing. And also, as Sujata told, all the rights of the person with the disabilities, there are any number of accommodations and modifications. For a child from grade 3 or grade 2 onwards, I have given, many schools are working on it. Once the child is identified what is the problem, we can give the child extra time. We can give the child facilities for somebody to copy. Now we were just heard about the peer education. Peers can copy for the child. And then the child can work on computer. The child can have a separate room for a sensory satisfaction. Those who have got the sensory problems, they must go, when they have become overactive and they are not able to manage the classroom, there should be a corner of the classroom where the child will be able to do. It all shows we lack so many things. We have so many challenges. How are we going to fix it up? Of course, we have 10 years time, but unless and until we are very proactive from the beginning, the buildings have to be changed. It is possible. It is possible. Now, I had the experience of taking 5 multiply challenged, brilliant children from my school, from Spastic Society of Karnataka to Christ College. These children applied for the college without telling me. And next day they called me and told me, ma'am, we have an interview, please come to Christ College. And I did not know what to do, where to look, whom to talk. My counselor was away on a trip. So I just went and I saw them all sitting, giggling, and the people came. Of course, they had one look, and the father and lovely people, they came. There was a place where there was a construction going on. They put a table and chair in the ground floor. They interviewed, and they were simply surprised how much knowledge these children have got, how much they want to go to the mainstream. So they said, ma'am, we are taking all the 5 of them. I said, are you sure? He said, yes, we will take all 5 of them, but I would like to meet you after a couple of days. I did go. You will be surprised when the school college opened. They had ramps in place. They had special bathrooms in place. They allowed the parents to come and feed some of the children who could not feed themselves. They allowed them to come to the classroom. Then slowly the peers started feeding them, and they all finished. They all finished their education. Some of them are working, and I think it is fantastic for the institution. If they can afford, can change. If those who can't afford, I'm sure there are government grants for doing this along with the NEP's implementation. I'm sure there are enough funds for all the schools to implement some of them. And there are colleges. Very recently, one of my boy who writes, who types and writes with his toe and paints. Brilliant boy. He wants to do the coding and he wants to become somebody great. Many colleges he went, they said no. And finally, of his own, he said, I do not want anybody from the school to come. After I get admission, you please come and speak. He went, one of the very eminent colleges, I just forgot the name. They took him. We managed to get, very poor family. We managed to get a laptop from one of those companies, gave it to him. He continues to type with his toe, and yesterday I told him I am going to attend a webinar, one of the meetings where can I talk about your thing? He said, sure, ma'am, you can even mention my name. I don't have any problem. It shows these children can learn. And what I request all the educators to think, please go with an open mind that these children can learn, and whatever you can do to make the change. Overnight, you cannot have changes. Maybe you cannot change the building. I mean, it is too expensive for the management. Possibly, you can bring the class down into the classroom for those children who have got a physical problem. And other people, I'm sure every educator is a special educator, according to me. Everybody has some mother, according to me, because they can somehow or other find out the needs of the children. We can do a bit. We cannot do everything. Discuss with your colleagues. Discuss with the specialists. Discuss with the various organizations which will help. They will come forward to help you. And I am sure everybody will be able to implement this policy. May not be 100%. Even if we can do 50%, I think we have gained so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaili, for that beautiful anecdotes also, which I think have said it all, actually, more than any other
stories. You can give me one day, full day to tell my stories, success stories.
I totally agree. I hope Sylvie is listening. And I've been feeling this right from the start. 40 minutes is too small for a conversation.
I know.
And with such a diverse panel also, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Each one of us
I would like to add on with what ma'am was saying. I think she's covered up whatever was there in my head and what I have been doing in that particular field. So thanks to ma'am. Like what ma'am was saying, each school should have a separate classroom for these children, which they are not aware. And these children have to be kept separately, and the special educator should teach these children, and they should be included with the other normal children for their social activities like a PT period or one classroom period, which has to be done. So couple of, I think 2 years before this pandemic and all, there was one child case which came to me, and the school refused to say that we cannot train the teacher every class where your son will be moving. So it's better you remove the child and put him into the special needs. Then they came to me through some organization and I guided them everything. And then I attended the meeting along with the parent to see the principal. And I asked him, and he said the same thing, like, ma'am, now the child is in 2nd standard. You want us that 3rd, 4th, 5th, till he goes to 10th standard, we will be training the teachers every section. I said, who told you to do that? Where is your special educator? What is she doing? What is your counselor doing? What are you doing in the remedial room? I said, he didn't have the answer. I said, if you are not having all these things, then at the end of the day, you are in the wrong side. You cannot ask the child to be removed from the school without parents' consent. You are not forcibly imposing that to the parent, saying that your child is like this. I said, look at the other side of the talent, what the child is having, which I myself saw. You give any words to him, 10, 15, 20, you take the book after 10 minutes, he will spell each and every word. He sings so beautifully. I said, you are not seeing the brighter side of the child. Then after all that meeting, he went back to the class, and I told the parent that without your consent, they cannot give the TC to you at all. And as per the RT Act, no school is allowed to give the TC. That is another act which parents are not aware. So then he went back to the classroom. And I personally called the teacher of that section and I requested, as a teacher, what are you doing when the child is getting bullied? As ma'am was saying, see, it is the responsibility of the teachers. It's not that every teacher will be a special educator, but a common few things which teachers should notice. What is that different from this child to the other children, which they can identify at the LKG itself. If they identify early, then the parent will also get enough time to understand and put them into the therapies and help the child with whatever the problem he or she is coping up with. So after that, then I called the ma'am and I told, why don't you ask this particular boy to sing a song in the classroom? Let the boys enjoy. Then make them understand he is one among them. He should not be bullied. So today that boy has gone to 4th standard. Even in the virtual class, when he does singing and all his classmates, the way they applaud and then praise that boy. See, it is every child is God's gift. And we as an educators, we as an activist or whoever, everyone's role who is working for the children, you put yourself in their shoes. As a parent, what you undergo, what you are you would face that if your child was born like that. We are blessed that we are having a good children, but the children who are like that, the parents who are having those kind of children, please understand their state of mind as an educators, help these kind of children, and they can definitely be in the same school. Ma'am said that 40 children will be, 50 children will be there. How to cope up this one child? Given an opportunity, in the worst scenario where very hyperactive or you cannot cope up with the child, I suggest and guide the parents. I have convinced and made them understand this is not the right place for your child because it might become a worst rather than we correct them. So when with my intervention, they have left the school also. But 80% of the cases I have seen, given an opportunity, you train those children, make them understand. Today, I have another child in one of the reputed school in Bangalore, on topmost school it is. He is writing his 10th standard board examination. Last week, his mother messaged me, thank you, ma'am, with all your guidance and support, my son is writing board examination. So my request to all of you all that whichever the field you are working, any type of these cases comes, especially what ma'am is dealing with. And also there are Vamshi Priya ma'am mentioned that when we say inclusive, it is not only about these children. There are various other aspects which includes here, which has to be looked into as a serious matter. As far as implementation, which is very important, and I have been telling in all the TV panel discussions also, and I would like to say that again, that in our system, we have seen that policies are made, rules and regulations are made. Everything will come from the government, whether it is a state government or a central government. How far it is implemented, how far it is executed and correctly followed, that is not observed or seen by any of them, which is, again, I would blame. If the institution is not following, then it is the responsibility of the government to look into that. So, which is not happening. Here, the national education policy should not become a political agenda. It has to bring up a change in our education system, which will be definitely a good one, what they have done now, but it has to be implemented in each and every step. When we are talking about the 3-language policy, when we talk about the local language policies, each policies, if you look into, each policy is having its own pros and cons. So when we talk about 3-language policy also, they say that the main reason is for the cultural and traditional introduction to our younger generation in future. But yet again, the institution will face a problem. If it is a Christian institution, what culture do you expect them to teach? If it is a Hindu institution, we have the Muslim children there. If it is, it is again a vast topic. The policies have been made, but few things are not clear in that. Even when we talk about the technologies, when we are saying about this learning this one, if the new technologies has been used or introduced, then again the school will come up with increasing the fees.
Right.
They'll give the reason of
sorry
national
to
education
interrupt.
policy.
Yeah, I think we're running
Niharika?
out of time. So
Yeah.
I just thought we could, have Nikita share, a quick, in short, what you think are the challenges in implementation. And, hopefully we can take at least 1 or 2 questions from the audience.
Niharika,
Sorry.
because of time constraints, we will have to move on. We will have an interaction time where the audiences will get to interact with all speakers in some time. So we can take up questions at that point of time. Nikita, if you could just take a minute and conclude, so we can move on to the next.
Definitely. So after listening to all the perspectives that I heard just now, the one thing that comes into my mind, like what are the main challenges other than the allocation of fund or the blended technologies, that acceptance that, right now it's not just about the traditional educational system that has been there for decades, where we were only concentrating on the STEM, like the science, technology, all of that, but rather it's the blended aspect. It's also about art, it's also about humanities, and it's also about accepting one another. Like right now when we're talking about education, it's all commercialized. I'm saying it out open, it's all commercialized, and parents have become passive. Like Vangshipriya ma'am told that parents have to take an active role. So right now, if you could bring about that change where all the stakeholders are in the picture, let it be the parents, the educators, the principals, the management, the government, everyone, if every single person plays an active role and understand that it's not just about scoring higher marks in math, chemistry, physics, or whatever papers that we have, but rather it's also about inculcating the basic qualities of an individual. Like, as Mr. Rishi rightly told, we have to prepare a student, like no matter the age, to how to go about their life, how to deal with the uncertainty that will be coming ahead. So if we could focus on the basic elements of self-awareness, emotional learning, it could be social learning also. There's one point that I want to mention. NEP, they have spoken about the overall report card, in which there are 2 aspects where kids will be assessing themselves as well as they'll be assessing their peers as well. If we could introduce these small aspects through which we will inculcate self-awareness, social awareness. So if you could just bring in this small aspects in one place and the other, instead of just dumping it on a whole, it will be all the more easier for us to accept the changes that are laid out by NEP. So these are the 2 things from my side. It is that we can no longer look at education the way we are looking at till now. That's one point. And the second point is acceptance that things are changing and there are more things that we have to put in. It is also to remove the stigma that surrounds around mental health and self-awareness. So these are the 2 main challenges that are to be dealt, apart from the financial or the digital challenges that we have.
Thanks, Nikita.
Thank you
Sahana,
so
do I have time to make one closing remark?
You will have to take 30 seconds and close quickly, because we'll also have to respect the time of our next.
Sure. Okay, fine. Yeah. So in 30 seconds, my biggest takeaways I'm just sharing with everyone from this conversation, right, is we spoke about awareness, number 1, of the policy. Second, awareness again of ourselves and what the needs of the children are, right? And third, I think, is a system for accountability, right, which is really missing. I think these are my 3 biggest takeaways. And I also thought I'll share with you from my interaction with Dr. Kasturi Rangan, right? You will be happy to know that, great minds think alike. So according to him, he mentioned only two major challenges, right? One is the fact that people aren't even reading the policy, okay, and then going on and discussing about it. So he's like, people should actually read it. It should become mandatory for everyone to read it and understand it in letter and spirit. And second is in terms of the mindset, where there is still an understanding, a feeling that a teacher is in a position of power and you are the one who knows what's right and is the giver of knowledge, right? So this is something he really pointed out, that, from a cultural perspective, this understanding that learning can come from anywhere and anyhow is that humility is something that's missing, and that's a very cultural thing. So yeah, I just wanted to share this with you. These are the 2 things that Dr. Kasturi Rangan himself shared with me, and it's amazing that those are the 2 main things that we spoke about as well in these 40 minutes. So thank you so much for the wonderful insights. I really wish we had more time, but again, respecting the schedule, over to you, Sahana. Thank you so much. I wish we had more audience interaction, but because of the hacking, we had to sort of keep that